Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to day 4 of Flashpoint 2. It's another beautiful day here at Twickenham Stadium in London, but it may be the calm before the storm as the Demolition Men of Group B are ready to cause chaos. Destruction is about to ensue as one team will be bulldozing their way towards the playoff, while another is taking a step closer towards elimination. But before that, it is, of course, time to be getting to the point. My name is Freya Spiz, your desk host for the duration of the day, and of course, joining me, my wonderful analyst Maui, and we've also got a very special treat in Semler as well. How does it feel to be up here on this absolutely ginormous desk?
Hello, everybody. Fantastic. We're properly socially distanced. I can barely see you over there, Freya, but you know, everything is great, guys. I'm excited to be here.
It's going to be incredibly exciting indeed. Maui, you excited to be delving back into our Group B competition? We're coming full circle back around to where we started this Flashpoint 2 season.
Yeah, it's going to be great to see who busts out the wrecking ball today in the Demolition Man group and is able to secure themselves a playoff in Flashpoint 2. First team that'll enter the playoffs.
Exactly, indeed. And of course, if you guys aren't familiar with the format, we can take a little bit of a recap to see exactly what is happening here at Flashpoint. So, of course, we have got those 3 groups consisting of 4 teams in each. And, of course, it's GSL style, best of 3, double elimination. And Maui, of course, in true Flashpoint style, the teams sort of got to pick their groups here. So nobody can be moaning if they're going out to any of these teams in their group. But we also have the interesting thing of course, our last chance qualification spot as well, which is going to be interesting, Maui, because we saw yesterday some of those teams falling towards that 4th place spot in their groups. It's kind of contentious already, right?
Yeah, so if people aren't aware of how the last chance qualifier works, it's the 3 third-place teams from the 3 groups, and then the 4th-place team is going to be decided based off of maps won in their lost BO3s. So for OG and Cloud9, for example, they both lost 0-2 in their matches. So if one of them goes home going 0-2 without winning a map, they will have no opportunity in the last chance. That match in Group C will actually be their last match.
They will indeed, and of course, as we were saying earlier, Semler, of course, one of these teams today, they're going to be going straight through to the playoffs. Of course, we will have the finals coming up later, but of course, they'll be going straight through to the playoffs
so
next week as well.
distracted by just how handsome both of you are. Maui, oh my God, man, how am I supposed to do my job with you here?
You're making me blush, man. Come on, like, not on camera. Come on, man.
All right. Sorry, I need to hear the question again. Hey, Freya, what is
yeah, we were just, talking about the playoffs. Very important here at Flashpoint. Of course, $1 million prize pool coming into this. So today we get to see one of these teams going towards it. And I'm wondering your thoughts, maybe thinking about this group for a little bit.
This group in particular,
yes,
I was so excited to see what MIBR were going to bring to the table, considering how they performed in Blast last week. They showed us, they really took that group by storm, really putting some great CS on. And so going into this one, obviously, towards the end of the year, they had a real rough patch where you're like, I don't know what to expect from these guys. It could be totally up in the air. They can completely self-destruct and blow up and do nothing. Or they can start hitting headshots everywhere and just start taking everybody by storm and really having that wild energy that the Brazilian scene brings to CS. And they've really done the latter here. They've just shown really entertaining Counter-Strike. And, well, I hope to see more from that.
Yeah, and of course we will be seeing more of them later on today. But I think before we do that, we've got to recap exactly what we saw yesterday as well. Because Maui, bit of a rip for our predictions yesterday, having a look at this. Actually, we're going to take a look at the current bracket that we're going to be delving into today before we take a little bit of a recap as well, because obviously it's going to be big versus fours coming up this morning. That is a very exciting prospect, Maui, considering, we're saying big are one of the favourites to be coming into this tournament.
Yeah, probably on the bookmakers lists, they're going to have Big right at the top there, the favorite for Flashpoint 2, and they've looked pretty good so far, but MIBR, they did expose a weakness in Big's entire game plan, which is probably their vertigo. I don't know if Forza is going to be going there today. Seems rather unlikely, but Big, they've shown some vulnerabilities as well, but I would say top to bottom, this is a super complete team. They have one of the best operas in Sursen, one of the best entry frag riflers in Xantares, and Tabson, just an all-around great player and leader for this squad.
It really is indeed. Very excited to see them taking to the stage in our first game. But of course, we've got to take some time to have a chat about some of the more fun topics we're going to be covering in the Counter-Strike sphere here. Of course, player salaries. It's been a bit of a hot topic recently, especially with Henry G announcing the players' buyout salaries on Cloud9. And I'm wondering your thoughts on this topic, Mario. I know we were kind of discussing it before we came on air.
Yeah, I think that player salaries and them being released is probably going to usher in the era of the most exciting Counter-Strike that there's ever been, from my perspective. Because what's going on in regular sports, I'd say ball sports, I'd say.
Stick a ball.
Yeah, just ball sports. Is that players' salaries have been out for a long period of time, and what that allows in the off season and for players at home, or I mean fans at home, is that people get to kind of play that sofa GM role. They get to sit back and think about trades that are possible, roles that are possible. Just how could players swap out and in for certain rosters, given the contracts that we see, the duration of them as well, and people are going to start brainstorming and bringing ideas to the table, and it allows us to be kind of fairly critical about players because we see their salaries now, and we're going to see, oh man, this guy's getting $2 million. What is he doing in the server right there? But if a player gets less, you'd be a little bit lighter on him, and I think that's kind of been a criticism of the CS scene where we don't really know what behind the scenes is going on in terms of people's salaries, and so judging people can be a little unfair at times.
Yeah.
You think so?
Yeah, I do think so.
I think the complete opposite.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think to me it's absolutely irrelevant to know how much money they're making because you see what their stats are in the game. That's all that I care about. How much money they make. They could be playing. We go back to the beginning of CS:GO. It was never about the money. They weren't making any money when NiP was dominating. They were just utterly crushing everybody. And so you knew they were the biggest brands and they were the best in it. And they made some money on the side at the end. But at the end of the day, do I really care how much money they're getting paid? No, I care if he's hitting headshots in the server. That whole thing is just tooting horns, and I'm not a big fan.
I'll say this, for
Sure.
some people at home, it's an exciting prospect because, for example, the Football Manager game, people love that game, and that's all just looking at the spreadsheets, looking at the numbers, and so people do like that side of it. I understand.
But you have stats for that.
Yeah.
I don't care about how much Cold Zero is making. I'm assuming Cold Zero is making bank because he's fragging everybody in the server day in, day out. He's an absolute dominant beast. So I'm assuming he's making good money. How much money he's making to me, I don't know about that because we don't really know. It's still unclear in terms of what esports is about in terms of how much money anybody is making in this industry. So knowing how much the players make, okay, cool. Fine.
But isn't that an interesting point? Because I was chatting to Henry G about this when we were doing those long-form interviews. Of course, you can check those out on the Flashpoint YouTube channel as well. But he was saying it's good for the players to know their own value. So if they're going to go to another team, they're not getting ripped off. They're not getting paid too much. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Maui.
I think that's where it's been a little bit more contentious for me in particular, because if I do see a player in the server, and this is where it's about the headshots, it's about the stats, is that if I see someone in the server that's getting paid way more than me, but I am outperforming him, there will be a little bit of dissent on the team, perhaps. So that can lead to some divides in teams if people aren't mentally strong enough to just kind of get past that part of the job, the fact that, well, the team evaluated at this level. Maybe in the future you can renegotiate if you're doing well enough. So it can give you something to strive for, but at the same time, it can be a little bit rough for some people, just the mental side of it.
It's a fair point because this is where we get cynical about it, and I'm actually going to have to eat some crow there because I have to kind of walk that back a little bit. There is a second option to high salaries, and that is actually having a brand. And so there was one guy who actually understood that very early on in CS:GO, and that guy was Hiko, and he was just dominant at the very beginning. Not only was he great in the server, but he was great on social media. He had a stream all the time, YouTube, whole pizzazz, right? All of a sudden, that guy's worth his weight in gold to anybody. And you could see some of the North American teams who can't field a roster that can win a match to save their lives. What did they do? They hard shifted over into the stream, into the content. Shroud, all these guys, where it's just massive value is actually coming from the casual market.
Yeah.
That's where those guys are making their money. That's where those TOs are like, oh, sweet, this is it. This is where it is. So actually, I think it's not even about knowing how much people are getting paid for. It's actually where's your value at the end of the day? Is it hitting headshots, or is it just having a stream or social media or anything? Things that players today still struggle with. They still don't understand that doing an interview is a really good thing. You should actually want to do all the interviews you can do because then you're bringing value to your brand and to yourself. They still don't get that sometimes. They still think it's only about it. It's a mix. It's a mix at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, that is a good point as well. And I think the interesting thing is I was kind of reading up on this topic when I know we were going to be discussing it, and I was looking back at a Vitality interview from the CEO about December of last year, and he was saying, he wanted to make the player salaries public, but when it's only him doing it, it's kind of a bit of a downfall for him. He's the one taking the fall for that. Everybody knows the salaries of the players on that particular roster. So with Henry G doing this, Maui, do you feel like this is going to become a bit more of a common trend to see orgs doing it, or do you think they won't be following suit?
I would say yes, because we're already talking so much about Cloud9 for making this move, and because of that, there's more impressions, that's more views on social media, that's more people talking about it, more people spamming in Twitch chat, oh, S-Attack, $2 million player, and it's okay, maybe he's not satisfying their expectations because of that salary, but they're also talking about him, and for a lot of these orgs, no publicity is bad publicity.
Yeah,
that's a very fair point.
It is indeed. Of course, let's move it on to another topic here up on the desk. We're also going to bring our wonderful casters in there. Dundgren is down in the seat too. It's a tournament of champions. This is what we're going to be talking about, gentlemen. 2 champions over there on the desk. How are you both doing over there?
I'm on my Nico shit now. I'm like, I just do everything. You know what, Sam? I'm like, get out that seat. You go and be the analyst. You do the pre-game waffle. I'm in. All right, Anders, finally, me and you together for the game.
I turned my back for a second.
The real Skrill combination.
I was hoping that my casting career would last longer than 2020, Duncan, but I guess what can we do?
It's all right.
This
would obviously be one of those, pictures before unfortunate moments. Like,
yeah.
Well, Anders, let's do this. No, actually, on that topic of the salaries, I actually don't see what the Vitality guy is talking about. I think that what he's saying there is, I'd love to do this, but for reasons I can't. Like, think about it, right? What is the downside of revealing the salaries? Here's the example of Cloud9, right? Let's say this Cloud9 lineup does suck. Didn't do great in the first match. We're not writing them off. But let's say they did terrible and come last place here. Right now, if I'm Coldzera, some massive free agent who might be available soon, that guy sucks who's playing and he gets paid X million.
Sure.
If they talk to me, I know what kind of money I can get from them. I'm not going in like, can I get, they're going to lowball me. I'm going to come for, like, actually, I think that essentially, when you send out that signpost, the big neon sign, we pay millions of dollars and massive buyouts, talent looks at that and they go, great, I'll find my way to Cloud9. You don't know some of the orgs. Sadly, some of them are nightmares where the org's big. Some of the players that were signed 3 years ago get the 30K a month. If you sign, you're getting the 10K a month and the buy has to be 100K. Like, I think actually it would only help the players. The org might not like it. They might get a bit of a diss, but I think it only helps players.
So the real question here to me is just, okay, fine, fair enough, but is that the salary market stabilizing itself after the bubble of such rapid growth in CSGO? You know what I mean?
I don't think it'll ever stabilize, mate.
Is it coming back down to a normal level where it's like this is the value, the actual market value of you coming to the table, or is it still just like these old contracts ain't like that's what I'm wondering.
Yes.
Right? This is where we have the debate.
The salaries, unfortunately, are insanely inflated. Like, you will never, ever make... Like, those Cloud9 players, they'll never make the money back from them, ever. Of course not. They could even win all the majors. It wouldn't matter. Just look at Astralis. Where's all their money? They won all the majors. So the
Astralis have to go and get the new talent and farm them out that way.
So the issue for me is, like, I don't think that will affect it either way, because the big problem that pushes inflation is just stupid money, just spending too much on players that aren't worth it. And that'll always be the case.
Yeah.
But enough about Gen G.
Of course, moving on from that topic, we've of course got to get into our second segment. It's going to be the Tournament of Champions. We've actually collected 8 of the most iconic and historic CS lineups in history, and we're going to be pitting them to see who is the ultimate best. So let's take a look at the graphic that we have to illustrate this and see exactly which teams we have got going on. Thorin, do you want to walk us through our first one, an MTW and Na'Vi from those eras? Can you kind of give us a little bit of a context for those?
Yeah, these are 2 of the classic 1.6 teams, and funnily enough, obviously in 2010, 2 of the cores actually were an amazing rivalry. So MTW 2008 had Zonic in it, coach of Astralis now. They had Wimp, who was obviously like managing director or something of North previously. Yeah. It had Ave, who was the in-game leader. He was the coach of North. And then it had a couple of players called MG and Sunday. Sunday was a player, funnily enough, Devices sort of modelled his game off. So that was a team that was very well-rounded. Think about it a bit like Big now. They had all the tactics. They had players who played all the roles very well. Great map pool. So they just beat people by just, on average, consistently being better. Kind of like what Astralis did later under Zonic's purview. Then you had Na'Vi 2010. This was where Ukraine had never been a relevant power in Counter-Strike, but this like Kazakhstani oil magnate or whatever the story was, Arbalete, told one of the legendary players, C.R.A.E, who already was a veteran at that time, make a team where you avoid any petty politics and differences, just make the best 5 players that would make sense in the server, and literally the year they made the team, they won all 3 majors, they added a 4th one the next year in a row, they broke the prize money record, and it basically revolutionized Counter-Strike. So that one right there is a real tough one. Like, those 2 teams could be in the final. Like, the idea you have to pick between those 2, those are bangers.
Yeah, let's start by picking between those. Anders, do you want to give us your thoughts on it?
I mean, the problem for me is obviously I'm going to be biased because of nationality concerns, but I actually am still going to end up picking Na'Vi, I think, for this one. Everything Duncan just said. It's also, I think, just to emphasize that, it is the shock of having them not even knowing who they are and then just banging onto the scene and just exploding on everyone. I think that's so, that's so dramatic.
It's comparable to when, like, the Brazilians went from being like, we could make top 8 at a major to we just win both majors next year. Like,
also did skip the most important thing. They have Markelov, so
that's it. That's the whole point.
When he was good. Basically, Markelov was so good then in 2010. He warped Anders' mind to this day. So,
it's true.
And only Cheesecake has done
He's the one that got away.
I guess we're going to be going on with Na'Vi for that first one. So let's move it down a little bit. We've got Ancients versus NIP. Sam, I'm going to throw this one to you. Who do you think deserves to go forward?
NIP, because they actually played CSGO. I don't care about any of these other teams. I'm here to watch CSGO. For me, this is all about CSGO. It's fantastic. We have this history in Source and in 1.6, and that's awesome. But as far as I'm concerned, like NIP, they utterly dominated at the beginning. They were the trailblazers. They set the style that is still being played today in certain iterations. Super loose, star heavy, get in there, frag out. You know, strategy, what's that? You know, the whole idea is that NIP really set the tone for CSGO and utterly dominated the beginning of CSGO. And so as far as I'm concerned, NIP just go all the way actually through this bracket. We can just go ahead and skip Navi 2010.
Oh, okay.
I want to bring up a little thing about Ancients there. I do remember this team just a little bit because I was actually in on Source.
Is this where you had the lollipop, you know, like in the cradle?
I was a little kid just watching it on my monitor right there, just like Kodiak Source, yeah.
What's the little rattle? He had a little rattle.
No, but I remember Kodiak actually from this roster, and because he had a Source video, he had a really sick frag video. I think he had a few actually, and they were all pretty nice. But then I did look at their results, and they weren't winning a lot of tournaments, but they were kind of like consistently placing pretty highly. So at that point, I would also have to side with NIP because I don't remember. I mean, maybe Duncan has more history on this team, but I don't remember Ancients actually winning as much as NIP obviously did.
Well, we've got NIP locked in there, so let's move over to the other side of the bracket. It's Very Games versus Fnatic, both from 2009. Thor, I'm going to give you this one. Who are you going to be siding with?
The problem here is everyone remembers this famous stat that Very Games had something like, I think they won something like 40 lands or something. But that obviously wasn't all in 2009. And the problem is, this is where the fact that the Fnatic team is from 1.6 gives them an obvious advantage, which is Very Games played in Source, and basically they didn't have what we consider the traditional majors. They would just have lands which were equivalent and sometimes literally were Copenhagen games. It would be like, you know, big like BYOC lands, and you'd have like a really cool like top tournament at it. Whereas Fnatic, they were winning like IEM3 global finals, where it's like a giant tournament, all the fanfare, $50,000 for first place. And that year particularly was the one where they had Forest, Get Right, Gux. They had this incredible lineup of fragging, and they basically just blew everyone off the server. Like if you look at the timeline, they came 1 year after this MTW team. Nobody could have an answer for the MTW team in 2008, but if you know the way Counter-Strike works now, and in fact how Astralis can be beaten now, the way Fnatic beat them was when MTW would start to set up the base of the tactic and the round, Fnatic would just push out of the CT side and just kill them instantly with no utility usage, just make it a gunfight. So they basically just blew everyone off the server. So I have to go with that team. I have a lot of respect for the Very Games team. I've heard great things from Source. Apparently Existence was a genius and a great AWPer, and you know, I don't think that lineup had shocks. I'm not sure that year, but Fnatic, it's got to be for me.
Yeah, let's lock that one into our Tournament of Champions. Then move on to our final first opening matchup. It's Astralis of 2018 versus the Golden Five. Maui, you're the only person who hasn't made a pick here, so who are you going to be going with?
Yeah, I've got to go with Astralis, of course. I feel like they perfected Counter-Strike, or at least played it as perfectly as you could for a while. That default-centric style, but there are some plays, there is so much teamwork in the late round. Their communication at so many points at different times in maybe any of the 3 majors that they won, all of which looked so spectacular every time. Anytime a round broke down, it always felt like Astralis was going to come out on top. And even when they weren't coming out on top, Zipnix was there to bail them out.
Yeah, exactly, indeed. So let's lock that one in. It's going to be Astralis taking that semi-final spot. So let's move it back over to the other side of the bracket. Obviously, Na'Vi versus NIP. Semler, I think we've just got to go with NIP, just from what you were saying there. You know, you made a very good case.
It's done. I mean, Anders may love Markov, but it's just not enough.
Won 4 majors in a row.
Yeah.
They were in 5 major. By the way, here's a good stat for you, Semler. You ready?
Go for it.
Na'Vi was in 5 major finals in a row, won 4. How many? NIP was in 5 in a row. How many did they get? That one, they snuck one out of the back door, mate.
They got my heart.
Okay.
They've held it ever since, though.
Let's go.
I'm going to go with Na'Vi.
And the damage they've done with it since, mate, you know.
Trampled it, but that's how life goes.
Oh, sure, true. Yeah. True.
Should we have a vote then? Should we have a vote?
All right,
let's raise our hands.
Yeah.
All in favour of NIP.
Democracy does seem to work nowadays, so yeah, let's do a vote.
Okay, NIP, raise your hand if you're going with them.
I'll go with NIP.
Yeah, you know what? I'll go with NIP too. Sorry guys, over on the cast's desk. Proper
usual.
analysis going on
there's an
over
extra
here.
vote that came in late.
So let's lock
is
in
that
NIP into this wonderful Tournament of Champions. And let's move it on over to Fnatic versus Astralis. Maui, are you still going to be siding with Astralis for this one?
I feel like this is just a little unfair because I have to go with Astralis on this one just by the precedent I've set for myself, which is I've pretty much just been watching since Go and some Source. So I haven't really seen this Fnatic as well as a couple other people here, so I would want to open it up just a bit.
Yeah, anybody else? Any takes?
What I would say is this, like, this actually, considering most of these matchups, not only could never happen in burst of time, but also it wouldn't make sense. Like, stylistically, like I said about the MTW comparison to Astralis, this would actually be an amazing matchup. Like, that's the sort of team that I'd love to see match up against them. It's why, for example, when FaZe was super sick, you like to see them play Astralis. It was the contrast of styles. But I will say, I think of all the teams on here, at least in CSGO, Astralis is the one that mastered the game and basically... It's the reason why when they used to have a bad tournament, they came in the semi-finals and lost in 3 maps, 16-14 on the 3rd map. Like, you can't fuck with that, basically. So I think it's got to be Astralis.
Yeah, let's lock Astralis in there into the semi-final, or grand final rather, coming up. So NIP versus Astralis is the 2 teams that we are left with. Maybe we should do another vote again. Should we?
It worked
should we
so
open
well
up
the
floor?
first time. So,
yeah, it was great. Worked very well for us up here on the
I mean,
desk.
logically,
So
let's just. Oh, I'm calling it early. Nip won already, so I've declared it for Nip.
Listen,
They win. Your van
if we're going to be using these tricks, at least can we do like another popular media show? Can we just prime everyone and say certainly if you're picking an IP, like you're not going to.
Put it this way: 80% of people,
basically.
80% of people aren't morons. Paul said Nip wins. So what do you guys think? What are you voting for?
So now what?
Semler, have you got any
I'm
thoughts?
losing it. I'm going Dip. I got to
Too much.
I got
Too much in here, guys.
We got to go Dip all the way.
I've watched some recent NIP games. I actually went back in history, and
It's hard, isn't it,
some of those
Maui? It's
Freiburg
hard to
sprays
watch.
are not that pretty. Like,
It's hard to
why?
watch. It's hard to watch,
It
for
looked
sure.
like people were talking so much about get right spray, Freiburg spray. It's like, why is it taking you guys 10 bullets to kill somebody? Like they don't need a spray on Astralis because they're just one tap in heads. And I feel like that's kind of an underrated game of Astralis' performance. Just the firepower on that team. Dupree is probably one of the most simultaneously overrated and underrated riflers in the scene right now. He's just so good at times but people forget that because he's such a good team player as well.
He's the full
I think we've got the
package,
swing
Yeah.
votes.
Yeah.
The swing
Astralis are
votes are in. So we vote for Astralis.
Okay.
Maui
Yeah.
swings.
Astralis.
You guys can do what you
You
want.
know what? Yeah,
Democracy.
we'll lock in
Democracy.
Astralis here. They are the winner of our Tournament of Champions bracket for the ultimate Counter-Strike team of all time. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for giving some input over there. It's, of course, incredible to be able to go back and witness some of the old teams in CS as well. But with that, I think it is time to be throwing to a break. We're going to be getting into our upper bracket matchup of Group B. After this, it's Fours taking on Big.